Hi, I'm Wayne the Boat Guy, and today we're doing a little bit more boat shopping. Part 2 of our Looking for Our Next Boat series. So in our last video we were down at the marina taking a look at what kind of boats other people have around here. And obviously I'm not going to let that 100% influence my decision, but it really does give me a good pulse for what kind of boats other people are using and what might be appropriate for the conditions that we're in. A question people have been asking me is what's wrong with our current boat? I bought our current boat for a specific reason. It was to be our starter boat. To find out if we liked boating, if we would use our boat regularly, and was I talented enough to be able to operate a boat successfully. Sometimes people buy a boat and they never use it. Other times they find the boat to be just very, very frustrating and they very rarely go out on it because it's so stressful. Other times people buy a boat and it's just the right boat for them. It's perfect, it meets their needs, and they're done. They've got their right boat. When we bought our boat, it was to be a starter boat. It was very inexpensive. What's wrong with our boat is our boat's only 19 feet long. And when we're out on the bay, even if it's not very choppy, that boat really gets pulled around. And sometimes when the waves are pretty big, there's a lot of surging when you're trying to operate the boat and head in a certain direction and you're going with the waves. You'll feel the boat accelerate and slow down as you're going along with the wave. Our boat is very small too, where it's only got seats for 4. I've had 6 people on there before. Total of 6 people, and when I've had 6 people on the boat, it's very loaded, and you can really feel it with the boat. My motor's from 1985, the boat's from 1975, so it's not the ideal family cruising boat. And that boat let us know the kinds of features we wanted in our next boat. And that brings me to the specifics of some of the things that we are looking for in our next boat. And there are certain things that we know for sure that we definitely want with our next boat. And that is, number 1, a minimum length of 23 feet. Everything I've read and heard from everybody is that if you want to have a decent ride out there on the bay, when the weather starts to change a little bit, you want to have a boat that's, usually they recommend 24 feet, but at a minimum 23 feet. The reason that's important is sometimes you can look at the weather. You can use all of your apps and check the weather and everything and the forecast for the wave height. And you can find out that, oh, it's going to be decent. And then the weather will change and you'll be an hour and a half out. You'll be across the bay. And if the weather changes and you've got to get back, sometimes that can be very harrowing, or if the tides are changing and those kinds of things. It can be very difficult and challenging and scary experience and dangerous in a smaller boat. That's why they have small craft advisories. And we get them pretty frequently around here. One of the other important factors for us is being able to have a head. So we want to be able to have a toilet on board, so that way when we do take a ride that's an hour and a half, 2 hours away, and we're out in the boat for a while, if we haven't got any place where we can dock, that we have a bathroom on board. The other thing is seating for 6. There are times where we would like to be able to take more people with us, and having a boat with enough seating to accommodate additional people allows us more flexibility with our boat. So those are our sort of core requirements for our next boat. Then we have a few nice to haves for our next boat. Nice to have would be a swim platform. One of the boats I featured in the last video had a nice big swim platform on the back, and we'd like to have one with a swim platform with a ladder. So that way it's easy to get on and off of the boat whenever people want to swim or if they're tubing or anything like that. Another nice to have would be a boat that's very easy to board. Swim platform allows for that. There also are some boats that have an actual side door on them or very wide parts on the side with the grip surface with handles, very easy for people to get on and off the boat. And another nice to have would be a quiet motor. The old boat has a 2-stroke from 1985, and quite honestly, that motor is quite loud. When I'm accelerating under throttle and my VHF radio comes through with the volume all the way up with an announcement, I can barely hear what it's saying. We can't play any music on the boat, and conversations are usually yelling at each other while the boat is underway. So we'd love to have our next boat have a much quieter engine. Obviously, if we had a newer 4-stroke outboard or an inboard-outboard combination, which has a car engine, a lot of those are quieter boats than what we have right now. So those are our nice-to-haves. And chances are our nice-to-haves will come along as long as we get our 3 other core features that we want. So anyway, one of the very interesting things that's happening right now is that the boat market is very hot. There's a couple of major factors going on right now. One of them is it's summertime, so boat sales are always higher in the summer. And then another big factor right now happens to be the fact that with things going on in the world in the summer of 2020, there's a lot of people who have chosen to buy a boat versus other types of vacations or things for the summer. Part of that is because you have to stay separated from other people, and if you and your wife go out on a boat, you can go do something all day long and you're not around crowds or other people. So I understand that. By the way, this is dragon fruit lemonade. My daughter made me some dragon fruit lemonade. I think it's her own concoction. She was going to make dragon fruit smoothies, but she came up with this, and it's very good. Very refreshing. So anyway, so today's a rainy day. It's rainy out, even though somebody is putting on a roof and doing all kinds of other things. It's not a good day for boating, and it's not a good day to go out and look at boats. So I'm doing my shopping online today. As I'm doing my shopping online, I've been finding some interesting trends. One of the things that's interesting is there's these publications like the Salty Dog. And these are free, and they list boats for sale. They also have a website. Those types of things just don't keep up anymore. By the time you go to look at a boat on here, it's already sold. And also, I think people have to pay money to be able to feature their boat on there for sale, when under a certain price bracket, it makes much more sense to list your boat on Craigslist, which we have here in the US. It's a free website for selling things. And Facebook Marketplace. It's another place where people can list things for free. And what I find is with a few searches around me, doing some distance radius searches, there's a lot of things for sale within 100 miles of me. A couple other criteria that I have been looking for in a boat too, that I didn't mention, is I'd like one with a trailer. Unless it's on my river, I can't motor it home. I'd have to get a trailer to be able to bring it home. So if it doesn't come with a trailer, then I've got to buy a trailer and I've got to get that fitted for the boat. And I'm not really sure what's involved in that process. I assume you have to do a few tweaks of the rollers or pads or bunks to be able to get them to fit. So I'd love to be able to get a boat that already has a trailer. Another problem I have too is my vehicle. I can't tow an extremely large and heavy boat. My truck does not have the biggest V8 engine, and it's not 4-wheel drive. And the boat ramp at our marina is very steep. It's a very, very steep ramp. So if I'm going to be able to yank the boat out of the water, I need something that's not too heavy and not too big. And of course, our budget. I don't have the biggest budget in the world. By some people's standards, they are probably jealous because I do have money to spend on a boat. Also, one of the things I'd like to do is I'd like to get a boat that needs a little bit of work, because that way I can keep making YouTube videos of the things I fix on my boat, and I enjoy making those, quite frankly. So I'd like to get a boat that needs a few things done to it once in a while. So anyway, back to my online shopping. So Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist have shown me a lot of really nice boats that are within reason. There's a lot of basket cases out there too. But what's interesting is that right now, when I find a boat that meets my criteria and my wish list and my budget, Usually by the time I've had a chance to contact the owner, reach out to them, try to get a few more questions answered, a lot of times by that time somebody's already coming to look at the boat. By the time they've answered my questions and I'm starting to think, yes, I want to go take a look at this boat in person, and I try to arrange that, somebody usually has already come and bought the boat. I literally found a boat the other day, and it just showed up around 5 or 6 o'clock at night. Looked at the pictures. I showed my wife. She said, yeah, that one looks really nice. Let's go take a look at that this weekend. It was about 50 miles away. I sent the owner 3 or 4 questions. He answered them right away. The answers were to my satisfaction. And I said, great, we're going to try to come out. Well, the next day was going to be raining all day long, and the boat was outside. So we tried to set it up for the next morning. So this was on a Friday night. We tried to set it up for a Sunday morning to go see the boat. And he said, great, I'm up very early. And I said, fantastic, I'll drop you a text when I'm on my way. And Sunday morning, about 8 o'clock in the morning, he sends me a text and says somebody had already left him a deposit for the boat. And they were buying it. So it was gone that quickly. Dragon fruit. So anyway, that was one that got away, and that's fine. That's going to happen. We understand that because the market is really crazy right now. So that's one of the things we've been contending with, is the fact that when something comes along that's good, that's a good price and a good looking boat, kind of meets our criteria, those are getting sold very, very quickly. One of the other things that's interesting is, because things are getting sold very quickly, is a boat survey. Everybody says, and I'll tell you the same, that you should always get a boat survey done whenever you're buying a boat. Last thing you'd want to have happen is you've just purchased a boat, you come home with it, and a week later you find something majorly wrong with this boat because you didn't get a survey done. I'm not sure if I'm going to get a survey done whenever I buy my boat, because apparently around here surveys cost about $1,000. The surveyors are also very busy, and it can take time to be able to get the survey done. So if I find a boat that's 50 miles away, by the time I've gone to look at it, if I want to buy that boat and I try to arrange for the boat survey, I may lose out on that deal before I even get a chance to have the survey done. So I'm really thinking whether or not I'm going to get a boat survey, and I think a lot of it depends on how good of a deal it looks like the boat is and how much of a risk we're willing to take. Say the sound advice is to get a boat survey done, and the sound advice also is not to buy a boat this year because the market's so hot. But we want to get a boat, and my wife has green-lighted it, so we're going to get a boat. In the area you are, obviously there's probably very different resources for shopping for your boat. But you may have the exact same ones that I do. So Facebook Marketplace seems to be pretty good, and Craigslist seems to be pretty good. What's interesting is that some people really dislike Craigslist, and some people really dislike Facebook Marketplace. I think both of them have their pros and cons. I've shopped successfully for things on both of them, ranging from cars down to little collectibles over the years, and I've never had any real problems. A lot of times it's a matter of asking the right kinds of questions and looking at an ad that, if it looks too good to be true, or there's something seems strange about it, not responding to those types of ads. For example, an ad that doesn't have enough text or enough pictures. There's a few boats in here that'll show up that are $50,000 to $70,000 boats that are showing up on here for $15,000. There's one, maybe 2 pictures, and there's about a sentence of text in there. I'm not responding to those, because if a person's trying to sell a very expensive boat like that very cheap, there's something wrong. Also, if somebody's serious about selling their boat, they're going to have taken quite a few pictures and they're going to put some text in there. And so those are the ads I usually lean towards. If there's a couple of paragraphs of text describing the pros and cons of that particular boat, or the history, why they're selling it, things that they've done with it. If there's several pictures, especially where they point out the flaws of the boat, I like to see those as well. So another thing I wanted to hit on is, what kinds of questions do I ask whenever I'm calling and inquiring about a boat? If the ad hasn't specified I try to find out certain kinds of things like whether the boat has been bottom painted. Bottom painting is very important if you leave your boat in the water. So if you're going to keep your boat at a marina and you're on a river, in the bay, or any of those kinds of things, you want to have your boat bottom painted because that protects the hull from barnacle growth and staining and other kinds of terrible things happening to it. So bottom painting for me, with being in a marina, is very important. If you plan on pulling your boat out every trip and putting it back on the trailer, it does not need to be bottom painted. You just squirt it off, wash it off, power wash it, wax it periodically, and keep it looking great. But if you're going to keep it in the water, it should be bottom painted. If a boat hasn't been bottom painted, that's something I need to consider because that's another project I'd have to do before I could keep my boat in the marina. So that's one of the questions I always ask. I also ask whether or not the trailer is currently tagged and registered, because that way, if it is, then my capabilities to potentially bring that boat and trailer home are greatly increased. If I have to get a trailer or the trailer is dilapidated, and especially if I have to travel any distance more than 5 miles, that's a problem. Another question I ask is about servicing. Do they do the servicing themselves or does somebody else do the servicing? There's no right answer for that, but I want to know how much does that current boat owner know? And what kind of records do they have? And what can they tell me about it? For example, if they say, I live right next to a marina, I don't do any of the work myself, I always have them do the work and I have a bunch of receipts, that's a satisfactory answer. If they say, I rebuilt this engine myself 2 years ago and it's got this many hours on it and I use these components and these parts and I did it this way and that way and here's how I've tweaked this and got this working, that's satisfactory as well, potentially. Other things I try to find out is why they're selling the boat. I had a boat that came up for sale and it really intrigued me. It checked off all the boxes and it was very nice, and my wife was very interested in it. When I talked to the current owner and was asking why they were selling it, they said because they had another better boat came along. And I thought, well, what's wrong with this boat? Well, he had a story that checked out for why a better one came along, but he had only bought this boat 2 weeks before. He had never even had this boat in the water, and he had sent away for a new title, and the new title hadn't come in yet. So he was trying to sell this boat, and he didn't even have a title for it. He said, oh, I can give you a bill of sale while we wait for the title to come in. But that sent up a flag, and I didn't want to be playing that game. You know, if you're buying a $500 boat, you can play that game, but whenever you're spending thousands of dollars, that's not a game to play. So I passed on that one. So what I try to do is I try to come up with questions about the boat to get some clarification, some more details. I like to know how long they've had the boat, what they primarily use the boat for, why they're selling the boat, what kinds of work they've had done recently, and just to kind of get a better feel, because a lot of that tells you the story of that particular boat, and that can help you buy the right boat for you. So, still on my journey shopping, looking online. I've set up alerts so that way I get notifications on my phone or my iPad as things come along that fit our criteria. I also sometimes broaden my search, so I'm not just limited to a certain price range or a certain boat length, because sometimes people put a listing in there incorrectly. And when they put a listing in incorrectly, sometimes you can be the first one to swoop in on it, because if they accidentally made it 230 feet instead of 23 feet, you might be able to be one of the first ones to spot that boat. So I usually check my alerts first, then I back out and kind of do a much more broad search. And then also as I find things, I go on to, there's a price guide website where I go and I look at what the price range is for that particular boat. So that way if a certain boat comes up from a certain year, let's say it's $10,000, I think, is that a good deal or is that a bad deal? I don't consider them to be the end-all be-all, but for example, if that website says that that particular kind of boat, that year, that condition, make and model, is only worth $5,000, well, I shouldn't be spending $10,000 on one. So anyway, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for my next installment in this as we shop for our next boat. And be safe out there on the water. Have a great day. Thanks for watching.